Alright, so anyway, so this kid's sitting there, and there's no damn way he's going to eat anything, eh? So we decide we're going to feed him, which I'm an expert at, because my son, the one who said no all the time, he was the most stubborn little cuss you could possibly imagine. And one time when he was about 9 months old, he got a hold of the spoon, and it was like he was not going to be fed anymore, eh? So that's fine, good, you know, it's like feed yourself. But no, kids, eh, they're too damn curious and playful really to feed themselves. So you sit them in a high chair, and then, you know, they fling the food onto the floor, because that's pretty cool. They can watch that over and over, you know, or they mess around with it, or maybe they, you know, put some in mom's hair, because that's interesting too. And they have 2 or 3 bites, and then they're not ravenous, and then they're much more interested in playing. And that's fine, except that if the kid doesn't eat, then it gets crabby, and, you know, whiny and miserable, and then it disturbs the mother or the father, and then it won't sleep at night. It's like, that's no good. So after about 3 days of that, I took the spoon back from him, and he was not happy about that, man. Trying to get that little kid to eat, once I got the spoon, it was like a 4-hour battle. It was really remarkable. So I had a lot of respect for his ability just to withstand stubbornness, you know. But I'd learned by that time as a parent that, like, if you want to discipline your child, there's an attitude you have to take, which is, I am going to win this. Like, I don't care how stubborn you are, I am going to win. And because I know I'm going to win, I'm not going to get angry. I'm just going to out-stubborn you. And so, so I'd take up some food and put it in front of him. He'd go like this. So that was a good trick. And so I'd try to get the food in there, and his teeth were gritted, so I'd poke him. You know, poke, 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 and after about 10 pokes, he'd get annoyed and go, ah, and I'd put the food in. And then he'd try to spit it out, so I'd hold it in. And so that was like 3 minutes, you know, and then we did it with another spoonful. And, you know, after about, I'd say an hour of this, my wife had to leave because it was like she just couldn't handle it. And about an hour after this, he decided that, you know, it was okay, and that he would let me feed him. But, like, it was brutal. And it was amazing. I mean, little kids are so damn tough, you know, they're really cute and everything, but they're so tough, you just can't believe it. So anyways, so we had this kid at the table, and he was not going to eat. So my wife, who'd learned these tricks by this time, decided to feed him. And he had a lot of sort of 9-month-old or 8-month-old behaviors, because, you know, kids have different strategies of resistance if they don't want to do something, and those strategies get more sophisticated as they get older. And he had some strategies, but they weren't sophisticated, you know. Like, he didn't make jokes or knock the spoon away or get angry or run away or any of those things. He did kind of 9-month-old things, which means he just put his head down, and when she put the spoon towards him, he'd just avert his head one way or another. So that was interesting, because I knew that his parents had given up feeding him when he was about 8 or 9 months old, because those tricks worked, and so that's why she could come to the house and say, he probably won't eat all day, but that's all right, which it isn't. It's not all right. So, fine, so my wife is trying to feed him, and he doesn't open his mouth, so she pokes him a bit, and sooner or later he gets mad and, you know, goes, ah, and she puts the food in, and she does, and then she pats him on the head as soon as he swallows it and says, look, you're being a really good kid, you know, you're doing a good job. And then, so he's wondering what the hell's going on, and then it was so interesting, because she kept feeding him, and he was still doing this, but as she patted him on the head, he'd be doing this, and he'd open his mouth. So it was like there was this weird conflict between his habitual behavior and this thing that was being reinforced. So then she'd, you know, put the food in and pat him, and he'd be kind of happy about that, and then he'd go back to his routine. And then she did that for, I think, about 20 minutes. It wasn't disruptive like all the other kids ate. They didn't even really notice what was going on. It wasn't a big deal, you know. But I was watching, because I knew something was up, because the stupid thing that his mother said, and then the fact that he wouldn't play. And he ignored me. I thought, no, there's something really not good here. There's a dragon here, and it's a big one. So she feeds him, and then he finishes the whole bowl. It's like, and she says, you're a good boy, you ate the whole bowl. And Jesus, you should have seen what happened to that kid, man. It just about broke my heart. Like, really. Like, his eyes got big, and he smiled, and he was just like, he was super thrilled, because he'd finally accomplished this absolute basic necessity that he hadn't mastered in 4 years. He finally got it right. And you think of all the meals that he went through, either being ignored or failing 3 times a day for like 3 years. Nothing but failure and bad responses. And, you know, he'd internalized all that. He thought he was a bad kid. And then all of a sudden, poof, he figured this out, and, you know, he got a reward for it. It was like, he just lit up, and that whole shell that he had on, that he was, like, using to protect himself when he was in the porch, that just melted away. It was like, it was horrifying and amazing at the same time. And then he followed my wife around after that in the house just like a puppy dog. Like, he would not get more than 1 foot away from her. It was unbelievable. And then we went downstairs to watch like a movie with the kids, and she sat on a rocking chair, and he climbed right up on her lap and grabbed her, just like that Harlow monkey grabbed the, you know, the little soft mother instead of the wiry mother. Boop, he was like this, and he was like that for like 2 hours. He wouldn't let her go. So then the mother came home, his mother came home, and she came downstairs, and she looked at what was going on, you know, and this kid was like glommed onto my wife, and she looked at her and she said, "Oh, super mom," and, you know, took her kid and went home. It's like, Jesus, like, if you don't think there's a dragon in that story, man, you're not listening to it. It was not good. And her response at the end was terrible. She should have said, "Well, how'd you get him to eat?" It's like, and what the hell is he doing, like, hugging you? He never does that to me. No way, man. She wasn't going to let that piece of information in. And it's no wonder, because the dragon in that story was her, and it was something she did not want to admit, and she was willing, perfectly willing, to sacrifice her child to her failure to realize that she could be a dragon. So that meant that the child was the problem, and that's a hell of a thing to do to a 4-year-old. So it was not pleasant. It was really not pleasant. In fact, we probably did damage to the child by actually getting him to do something good, because we opened him up to the possibility that he could behave properly and be rewarded for that, and that gave him hope. And so you can bloody well be sure that that hope was dispensed with the next day. So, and that's why Billy doesn't get anything to eat.